Welcome to the DevOps Library. We're glad you found yourself here. This is Samantha, and in today's lesson, we're going to talk about securing Jenkins. We'll start by covering the differences between authentication and authorization, followed by the different types of security realms, and lastly, how to use the Jenkins Role-based Access plugin. But before we begin, we'd like to give a quick shout out to Hired.com for being kind enough to sponsor our Jenkins course. If you aren't familiar with Hired, it's a great company that completely reverses the traditional job search by having companies apply to you instead of you always doing the tedious work of applying. Thousands of companies look to Hired to connect with the best of the best in our field, like you. Oh, and if you do end up signing up through our personal link and landing a new job, Hired will give you a $2,000 bonus for being a loyal supporter of the DevOps Library. All right, let's begin by talking about the 3 A's of security: authentication, authorization, and auditing. Authentication is simply the process of proving that someone is who they say they are. Once we know who the person is, authorization is the process of determining what they're actually allowed to do. And lastly, auditing is the process of logging every action that each user performs, such as logins, job creation, and so on, usually for compliance purposes. In this lesson, we're going to focus mainly on configuring authentication and authorization. All right, let's go ahead and see how to implement authentication within Jenkins. Pull up a Jenkins master, then head to Manage Jenkins, followed by Configure Global Security. First, we need to enable security, so go ahead and check the box if it isn't already. Next, we need to select a security realm for the authentication step. As most companies use Active Directory, we'll just use that too. Once you've made sure that your Jenkins master can resolve your domain via DNS, go ahead and click Test to verify that the connection worked. Then hit Save. All right, before we move on, make sure you log into a domain account or whatever security realm you ended up choosing, then return back to the Global Security page. Next, we need to decide on which authorization strategy we'd like to use. Anyone can do anything is pretty self-explanatory. Legacy mode isn't much better because it only gives you 2 levels of access: admin, which has full control, and everyone else, including anonymous users, has read-only access. Logged-in users can do anything is only useful if you'd like everyone to have auditable admin access, and usually isn't too useful outside of smaller teams. Matrix-based security is about the best you can get in the open source edition of Jenkins because it lets you get pretty granular on the permissions. Let's go ahead and take a look at it really quickly. See this really long line with all the checkboxes? That's how we assign permissions to each user. While it does work pretty well, you can't assign different rights to different jobs. The project-based matrix authorization strategy works the same way as the normal matrix-based option, but it lets you specify different permissions on each job's configuration page. You can certainly get by for a while using this option, but it does become pretty cumbersome as you scale, because there's no way to manage groups of projects. And lastly, we have the role-based matrix authorization strategy, which is unfortunately only available in the enterprise version of Jenkins, but is definitely the most flexible and easiest to maintain. For this lesson, let's go with role-based, as it can do everything the other models do and more, and it's also a big focus on the CCJPE exam. After selecting it, an Import Strategy dropdown will appear as long as you're already logged in. Change it to Typical Initial Setup, then hit Save. Jenkins will now automatically create an Administrators, Developers, and Browsers group. Speaking of groups, check out the new menu items on the side. You should now see 2 new options, one for managing groups and another for roles. Before we get too much further, let's take a break to cover some new Jenkins terminology. A local group refers to a set of users, or even a set of groups that we define within Jenkins. To manage them, click the Groups link on the left. Here you can see the 3 groups created by the initial configuration. An external group also refers to a group of users, or group of groups, but is one that's defined outside of Jenkins, like an Active Directory group. A permission is the right to do something, such as starting a job or creating a new project. A role is simply a collection of permissions, which makes them much easier to manage. Let's take a quick look at them. go to Manage Jenkins, followed by Manage Roles. On the left side of the table, you should see the names of our roles, and on the right, we can assign permissions to each one of them. See the little green hat by Anonymous and Authenticated? That's because those two roles are built into Jenkins, so you won't be able to delete them. The rest were all created by the initial setup wizard, so you can do whatever you'd like with them. Lastly, we have role filters, which are used at the job level to prevent roles from being propagated. As an example, let's take our Browse group, whose members have read access to everything, and create a job that they can't see. To do this, click the job, go to Roles, followed by Filter, and set Require Explicit Assignment on the Browse role. That's it. Our job is now completely hidden from members of the Browse group, unless they are explicitly given permission to this job. It's actually pretty useful, huh? Well, that's enough new terminology for now. Let's try out an actual real-world use case. Pretend we have a QA team that needs to be able to create, configure, and build any job that they'd like. However, we also want to ensure that they're not able to access anything outside of the jobs they create for QA. Don't worry, it's really easy. First, hop on the domain controller that Jenkins is using for authentication. Once there, open up Active Directory and add an account for QA. We'll name it QA User 01. Next, we need to create a security group. Let's go with Jenkins QA. Then once that's created, go ahead and add QA User 01 to the group. Now switch back to Jenkins and try logging back in with our QA User 01 account. While we were able to authenticate, our QA user isn't authorized to do anything yet. So let's switch back to the admin account. Now go to Manage Jenkins, followed by Manage Roles. On this page, click the checkbox for Overall Read access on the authenticated users, then hit Save. The reason we're giving that to every logged-in user is that it's the absolute bare minimum required to successfully open the Jenkins dashboard without seeing an error. Once that's done, head back to the main Jenkins dashboard. That way we can create a safe place for our QA team to work in. Thankfully, the RBAC plugin easily combines with the Folders plugin, so let's create a QA folder which we can then give our QA team access to use. Once you've created the folder, select it. Then go to Groups on the left side of the page. Click New Quick Group, name it QA Team, and choose Administrator for the role. Then just hit OK. On the next page, click Add User/Group. Remember that external group we just added in Active Directory? Let's go ahead and type it in here. That way our local Jenkins group knows which group of users in Active Directory to provide access. Then hit OK. Perfect! Let's log back in as QA User 01 and check it out. Great job! We were able to successfully set up a new external group in Active Directory, a new local group on Jenkins, and our QA team is now able to safely do whatever they'd like without worrying about messing up other teams' Jenkins jobs. Alright, that's it for our lesson on Jenkins security. As always, thank you so much for watching. We'd love to give another shout out to Hired for sponsoring this entire course. If you're into DevOps, there's a pretty good chance you've had to deal with pushy recruiters and countless emails, as well as spent many hours searching for DevOps opportunities. The reason we love using Hired is that it completely reverses this situation and puts the power back in your hands by having companies send you interview requests that you can choose to pursue. They even come with upfront salary and equity. By having you fill out information that's specific to what you're looking for and your individual strengths and talents, it ensures that the only companies you'll hear from will be a great fit for you. Plus, Hired is entirely free, and they're even going to give you a $2,000 bonus after you land a job using our DevOps Library link. We highly recommend giving them a shot. They do a fantastic job, especially for our DevOps community. Alright, thanks again, and if you like our videos, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, and if you love them and want to help support us, visit patreon.com/DevOpsLibrary. We'll even list you on our high scores list at the end of each video. As always, thanks again, and we'll see you soon.